here should come off when you're emptying or filling, otherwise it could collapse the tank or expand it. So take that off. So be careful, these edges are super sharp right here. It's called CIP, and CIP means clean in place. And ours is a bit of a homemade clean in place because this is such a small tank. And so we've put on an adapter here and a quick connect. And water's gonna go in here. It goes into like a pipe, and then there's a ball in there that's gonna spin really fast, and that's going to clean the inside, so we don't have to get up there with a hose. This is going to take care of it for us. I'm going to leave this on, and we're going to flush water into the system, and then just rinse it really well once. So I'm going to hook this side up. The pump pumps this way. I just remembered as a trumpet blowing, so if you were blowing in this part of the trumpet, it would come out this side. So we're going to go ahead and hook this to the trumpet part because we want the water to go into the tank. Okay. We have two tanks. This one is going to be our, it's overfilled. I overfilled it last time. Our sanitizer's in here. Our water's in here, and we're going to hook that up and rinse. So all of your ends, whenever you're storing, you should always have these covered. That the dairy inspector would want that. You always want your hoses to be covered. I take off the cap. I leave the washer, and I'm going to connect to the pump. I'm going to turn on the valve here so that it's open. I should have more water in. I'll have to fill this up because I'm going to use quite a bit of it. And then I'm going to just turn my pump on. I'm going to open up this lever to let that rinse. So this is how we got the milk. My hose is on the floor. I never want to put that hose back into anything that's clean. That hose would need to be clean before I use it again. So we're just rinsing out the hose a little bit, and then we're going to circulate some soapy water through the system once I see it come clear. So right now it still has a bit of milk in it. And you can see how the water is starting to fill up on the floor. I would stop the pump if that continues, but hopefully it can finish it. But if it doesn't, I'll have to stop it and let it drain. There's a little basket there that we can clean out. The pump, because it's not draining, I pulled this up. I used one of these, and I just put it in there and I pull it up. And I put my hand in here, and then the basket, it's pretty clean, but I guess the basket is just maybe making enough resistance, so I'm just going to take it out. So that was just a minute later, and it drained, so I'm going to put my basket back in. And then to put these back in, you're going to lift one up like that. And then I just give it a little, okay, thanks buddy. So at this point the water is clear, so we're going to go ahead and fill up our tank a little bit, and put some soap in it. So now what we're gonna do, we've filled up our tank, we've got our water here, and we have filled this up to almost 50 gallons. We're gonna get ready to circulate soapy water. So we have found that you need at least 50 gallons in the tank or else this pump can't prime itself. So you gotta put 50 gallons in that tank before you start to recirculate when you're ready to clean and sanitize. And so what I'm gonna do out here is simply, I'm gonna close this valve right here. So this valve is closed. I'm gonna have water just fill up the tank. And once I fill it up with 50 gallons, then I'm gonna open this valve. I'm gonna connect this hose back to that pump, and we're gonna just recirculate it. We'll make a closed system. So right now, I'm gonna just go over here and I've got my water connected to the pump. I'm gonna turn on the pump, and I'm gonna put about 1 ounce of soap into the tank, into into that bulk tank out there. Just a little bit of soap, and then we're gonna circulate it. So over here the valve is closed. We have filled up 50 gallons into the tank based on, we know that our drum has 50 gallons. So we put 1 drum into there. So it's in there waiting. I'm gonna add 1 ounce of soap, and I'm just gonna do it through here. When this is running, when this thing is spraying water, you really can't open this, you'll get soaked because it sprays pretty well. But I'm just gonna do what I think is about 2 tablespoons. Okay, looks good. And I'm not gonna lock it, it's not really necessary. And now we're gonna switch. I just wanna mention we're constantly filling this one. So while I'm doing this, I'm also filling this. So our milk went through this tube, we filled up everything, then we rinsed. So now we're gonna take that same hose. And remember, this is a dirty hose. This hose has been on the floor. We can't ever put it back into one of these until we clean it. So what I'm going to do now is, remember we talked about the trumpet and water's going out that way. So we now want to circulate soapy water. So I'm going to close my valve here. I'm going to get rid of this one going in. A little bit of water is going to come out. I try to keep my connections clean the best that I can. And then I'm going to hook this one. This is coming, remember, from the base of the tank. We're going to hook this so that we can now circulate soapy water. Okay. Open my valve now here. So now water's going to run there, and we're going to push it back into the tank. We're going to get that spray ball going and hopefully get some soapy water. And you can see it's almost not primed enough. Hopefully when it gets going, it'll really go. But if it wasn't quite enough, we'd have to add more water. But you can see this was borderline. You can see lots of air in there. Now it's going pretty good. Yeah, great. And you can hear up there, and you can also see water coming out the top. Perfect. So beautiful. But if this wasn't going for you, if you really couldn't get the cycle going, you just got to add more water to the system. 50 seems for this system to work at a minimum 50 gallons. So really a full drum should get you going. If for some reason it's not quite enough, add a little bit more water, but 50 gallons is a minimum for this circulation system to work. So So I'm done with this one. I will put my cap on, I'll put my gasket on, and I'll put it away, but this is just my clean water. Notice I didn't put soap in here. It would be impossible to really clear it out. We've been circulating for 5 minutes. I'm gonna turn off the pump. So pump is off, and at this point, I'm gonna disconnect from the pump and just let gravity feed, drain into the drain. This is a good time to clean your floor. So we just checked inside the tank and it's a little soapy. So before I circulate sanitizer, I do want to get rid of some of that soap. So I'm going to use my rinse water. I'm going to hook it back up and remember the direction, the trumpet blows out. So I'm pulling from this guy, just the rinse. I'm going to open my valve to here, and now I'm going to turn my pump on. And if I look at the end, so we realize you don't need 50 gallons if you're putting water in and just taking water out. It's only if you're recirculating. So in this case, we just have water going in, doesn't matter how much, and water coming out. Now it's nice and clear, it looks good. So I overdid the soap because there's still soap in there. So next time I probably won't put in so much soap. But my husband says I put in more than 1 ounce. I'm going to take this off and let some water drain. It's not ideal, especially if it's freezing out. But some of that water just doesn't have enough pressure to get out. So I'm going to go ahead. Be careful, it's probably going to come flying. There you go. I think the truck is a little bit tilted. You know, it might be ideal if we had the truck going the other way. Sorry, I got a little wet on that last one. Mark and I are going to tip the tank up for you a little bit by putting a block there, and that will help. That was kind of sudsy, and we're going to switch over to dairy soap. Dairy soap does not have a lot of suds, that's why I don't use it, but this is only the second time we've used this system, and I think this is the reason why they use dairy soap in the dairy industry, is it's not going to suds up so much. So now I'm going over to this one. This has bleach in it, 100 parts per million, and I have a little test strip to make sure it has enough bleach in it. But remember, this is going to be for recirculating, so we know we need the whole thing. If it was just water going in and water coming out, doesn't matter how much you do, but now we're going for circulating, so that pump needs to be primed. It needs all of this. Okay. These are the test strips. This is a very small amount of bleach. This is very standard for the vegetable industry, the dairy industry. They have us using sanitizers, and they like us to use bleach. So I'm going to make sure that I have enough bleach in here, and it's 100 parts per million. So I'm just going to dip this in, and according to this, can be read immediately. I don't have quite enough. I have probably 50, so I'm just going to add a little bit, and then I'll recheck it. Okay, so I've added a little bit of bleach. The most important thing is it has to be Clorox. Don't use the no spill, because that's a very foaming one. And the reason why it has to be Clorox is because it has a calculation for sanitizing. So the dairy inspector wants Clorox. I will give you a formula for how much you need to add per gallon. And if you add too much, just dilute it out. You could drain it and then drain a little bit and add a little more water. So perfect. So we're gonna turn on this one. I'm gonna take off my protective covering on this. And I'm starting with a really full bin. I've got this one shut off. I'm gonna swap. Open up this valve. We're gonna go back to our tank, our transport tank, and close it. Because our goal now is to get 50 gallons in there, so we don't want it draining out. So this one is closed. We're gonna fill it up. And one thing I'm gonna add is make sure this is open just a little bit. You don't want full negative pressure because it might stop flowing. So we're down, we've gone through this whole bucket, and I'm going to go ahead and shut off my pump. Now we're going to take the hose that was draining, and just by the way, I do like to lift this, whenever I'm cleaning, I'll lift this from here, and I'll try to get gravity to help me just to drain out any suds. So we've already done that. I'm going to close the valve on my sanitizer. So I'm closing it here. But a lot of this stuff is just logical, because if I took it off and it was open, it's just going to come pouring out. I'm going to take my other connection, because now we're circulating. Now we're going to go for circulation. So now I'm going to go back here, and since we're going to be circulating, we need water to come out. So I'm going to open this up, so this can now go to the pump, and then we'll have a closed loop. And this is with our sanitizer. And I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. So we have been circulating for 5 minutes. We've shut it off. Instead of draining the sanitizer, this sanitizer's, it's only 1 day old. I've only used it one other time. I prefer to use the sanitizer a few times, as long as I do that reading and I get 100 parts per million. So what I'm gonna do is I want my tank to drain, which is gonna drain through here, but instead of getting pushed back into the tank, I'm gonna push it back into this tank. So I'm gonna undo my end of my trumpet, because that's where the liquid's coming from. Oops, you know what? Go ahead and close your thing over there. Got it very soaked because I didn't close this. So before doing that, close that so you don't have water running through your pump. At this point, I'm all hooked up. The drain from the tank is coming through here, and when it comes out the end of the trumpet, it's going to go back to here. But I got to make sure this valve is open. So I think the hardest thing to remember about all of this is just check your valves, make sure they're going in the right direction. So I'm going to turn the pump on after I open up my valve. So I'm going to open that valve. So now water can come out. And make sure this valve is open. And the worst thing that would happen if the valve wasn't open, you just wouldn't get any water moving. If the valves are open and they shouldn't be open, you just get soaked. So we're done. I'm going to close my valve. I'll put an end cap on that when I store it, just like this one. I'll put the end cap there. I find this is nice. You can just hang it there. So I'll end up taking that one off. We're going to go over here, take our quick disconnect. I'll feed that back through. And then take this off. And when you are removing these, be careful you're not taking off too much. If you were to remove this piece, you'd have an awful heavy thing. But what I'm going to do is take that off and I'm going to put an end cap on it. When I go to pick up milk, I have to remember to change it. I got to put this on so I have a way to get my milk. But when I'm traveling, I do need to put an end cap over this. So this should have an end cap on it. But remember, if you're going to pick up milk, you've got to have this piece so when you get home, you have a way to control the flow. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward. So all of our end caps are on. Those are all covered up. Inspector likes that. I'm going to pull my hoses back through and just hang them up there, but I'm going to put end caps on anything that I can. And we put an end cap on here, right there. I'm going to close this, and I have a little bolt that I will close that with. Up on the top, I'm going to take my rubber stopper, put that back here, but remember to take that off when he's filling or you're emptying, so that has to come off. I'm going to look in here and just make sure it's empty. It looks good. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And I'm going to add my lid on the top. And the nice thing is, all of this cleaning, I still haven't finished pasteurizing, so it's not like you're doing nothing, or, you know, it's not like you're wasting time. The milk is pasteurizing, it's almost done. I finished my cleaning. This is much easier than what we did in the past, which was carry buckets, and that was very tedious. So this is a very nice, clean system. We've only done this twice, so I'm sure you'll find a system that might work a little bit better or improve on things, but so far this seems to have worked really well. Hope you enjoyed it.